from, educate how educate white folks to buy some guns. As a matter of fact, Carlton and I probably, if I don't get to the book group after November the 3rd, you'll know why.
But even without guns, we have bigger weapons. The big car at the corner of the street.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Not all weapons. That's the thing. I believe a lot of weapons, it's just posing because Second Amendment guys don't get it. If they go after the American government with AK-47s and AR-15s, they're going to be wiped out. They forget this is the country that has stealth airplanes that go max at 7 times the speed of sound and have bacteriological weapons, nuclear weapons. Sure, having guns will help you win the war. And it's a lie, you know. Owning weapons is never for safety, and it's just to feel powerful. That's it.
Yeah, but sometimes they use them a lot of times.
Oh, yeah.
And I find it quite frightening.
When you're going to buy something, you're going to try to use it. What's the purpose of buying something for, you know?
Yeah, so, but they have arsenals, though. They have arsenals.
Oh, yeah. The FBI saying that that's a real threat, and everybody's like, nah, it's Islam.
No, they have arsenals. They have
Not
arsenals.
Anymore.
They have arsenals in their home. Yeah, that doctor a couple doors down got an arsenal.
Remember that story? Nobody, even conspiracy theorists, never talk about that anymore. In 2001, after 9/11, we had anthrax attacks through the postal system. The guy was caught. They never really developed on that guy. I know the story's out there, and I know the guy's been judged, but it was so strange. How come this guy had anthrax in the first place? I thought it was a controlled pathogen, and no, this guy had that at home. Apparently, you can produce that yourself.
That's what's scary. I don't know where they get this stuff from. I mean, underground, obviously. But then again, I don't know how underground you have to go, because you can go on the internet and pretty much find anything you want to.
I heard that you can literally create it at home. If you have the animals.
I think actually I read there was a problem with that. There was a person on there, and I don't know if it's anthrax or another chemical, that he actually had a video how to do it yourself. You know, really, because this is our world we live in. You know, mass communication, VA, YouTube, Facebook, anything, and I think there was a lawsuit was put in against him by someone. I don't know who it was. I don't remember. It must have been a few years back or more, and they found out he was not doing anything illegal. They didn't. He said it wasn't illegal.
Okay, I think we're live.
We are.
Yeah, it says live.
Okay, it says live. The recording is going. So it did look like we. Give me 1 second more. Okay. Wow. I think I know what happened. Hopefully I won't have to go through that again, but geez. So it did look like at one point that there was one person out there waiting for us. I don't know if they are still there, but if you are, our apologies for the late start. This is my second night using our new Zoom app. And I've got a little learning curve going on. So, for example, last night, my name was showing up as Loga Odom. And I figured out today how to change it. And so Venita, yours says Venita's iPad. So if you want to change that, you can click on your name in the chat or in the participants. Do you see participants at the bottom of your screen? Are you still there, Venita?
I'm here.
Yeah, do you see participants?
Yes, I'm renaming it now.
Oh, okay. And so one of the things Venita pointed out last night was how small our names show up if you are trying to view the video. And I spent a bunch of time trying to figure out how to change that, and I have not succeeded yet. So if anybody Zoom aficionados out there want to tell me how to do that, that would be wonderful. So let's not waste any more time. Let's go on and get started. And let's see, let me get my pages together again. I'll go on and read the, my word is not responding. What the hell? Oh, I'm just having a lovely technology night. And the thing is, I have been online since about 5:30. So, I thought I was all set and ready to go and not going to have any problems tonight, but such is not the case. So while I'm waiting on my Word document to open, I just wanted to say to you guys that there is a story in the other book that we're reading, Cast, by Isabel Wilkerson, about anthrax being buried in the ground. And in Russia, and there's a situation where because of climate change, the ground the ground that's normally frozen starts to warm up, and after like 40 years of being buried way, way, way down in the earth, this anthrax comes up and it's killing all the reindeer and people in that area. And so because it had been frozen for so long, it had survived fully intact. So, all right, I'm going to read the summary. Is a short story of how nature unleashed the same deadly virus in two separate locations, how the best plans and intentions sometimes fail, and the continuing mysteries surrounding Ebola. In the final pages of Chapter 5, Yambuku, Ebola, of the coming plague, newly emerging diseases in a world out of balance, by Laurie Garrett, the 90.7% lethality rate of the Yambuku strain of Ebola would be mitigated for those lucky enough to receive anti-serum made from the antibodies produced by the Iranians Sophie and Sukato. The Sudan investigation would lead the CDC's Dr. Joe McCormick to conclude the Zaire and Sudan epidemics of Ebola were totally separate outbreaks, an idea so preposterous his colleagues dismissed it out of hand. Years later, his on-the-ground observations would be proven true. Nature had indeed rolled an incredibly bizarre set of snake eyes. The scientists and researchers had many harrowing experiences with drunken pilots, infection scares, failed evacuation plans, and diplomatic emergencies. By the time they went home, after 3 months in Zaire and Sudan, they were ready. Though the virus reservoir was never found, scientists would learn that pygmies in Cameroon carried Ebola antibodies, and appalling conditions in the mission hospitals were helping to spread the disease. I forgot to do introductions. So I am Michelle Odom, located in Brooklyn, New York, with our session 1 book for reading for change, the first book that we're reading together as a group. The Coming Plague, Newly Emerging Diseases in a World Out of Balance by Laurie Garrett. And we're scheduled to be here on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Into late February with some vacation breaks in there. And you can learn more about Reading for Change, A Collective Journey on Facebook, where we have a page where you can get invitations. And all of our videos are archived on YouTube under the same name. And Venita, I can't see your face anymore. I'm seeing a big old thing that says spring water.
Really?
Are you there?
Yes. How can you see the spring water sit behind? Oh, wow. Why is that? That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw you before.
I have no idea why you can't see me.
Have you moved the camera around, the iPad?
No.
Okay, well, introduce yourself.
My name is Venita Walker, and I'm joining you from Cromwell, Connecticut. Welcome. That's amazing. Why is that?
Yeah.
Why is it?
Did something happen when you changed your name?
I wouldn't think so. I just simply changed the name. Actually, I didn't even have to change. I just took out, iPad.
Right. I don't see anything on my end. Rick, give us your introduction, please.
Sure. My name is Rick. I'm from Queens, New York.
Queens, New York. All right. Anybody have a question or something you want to start us off with? Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out why this is turned around.
Yeah, I get it. Rick, why don't you read, let's do question number 5.
Sure. Question number 5. In the Ebola story, we see examples of uncommon courage and debilitating fear among the professionals and villagers. For example, on October 27th, 1976, the International Commission released its first report on events in Yambuku. It was a bland statement, conservatively designed to cast a sense of routine around a crisis that had rendered some team members patently terrified. Still, 2 scientists, a Zairawa and an American, requested permission to drop out of the investigation. Were you surprised some of the scientists wanted to leave this adventure behind? Were you surprised at the difficulties WHO encountered recruiting team members for the student assignment? What opinions do you have of the men and women who rushed toward these scenes of terror and of those who turned away?
Okay, thank you. Oh, there you go, Venita.
Yeah.
What was it?
The camera was turned around on my iPad. I don't know why. It just turned around, but I'm here now.
You're here now.
Cool. Yes.
Okay.
Cool.
Did you do your introduction?
Yes, I did. Did you, Rick?
Okay. All right. So we're on question 5, and I obviously am having a discombobulated night.
That's okay.
On question 5. Were you surprised? No, I was not surprised that some of the scientists wanted to get the hell out of Zaire and Sudan as quickly as they could. And I couldn't blame them when they came out with that first report that they tried to play down. But that led a couple of them to, request a way out. but I'm continuously impressed by the courage, the bravery, the high level of curiosity, whatever it is that allows people to do this kind of work. Because there's some scary. Did y'all see that picture of Ebola?
Yeah.
I put it in. It's so ugly. There's some scary, ugly, stuff going on in the microbial world. So I think you're some kind of special if you run toward it instead of away from it. And I'm thinking about that scene where they got the prisoners to go out with Joe McCormick to pick up the dead bodies.
Yes, see, that was the time to leave. That was the time for him to.
And they did.
That was Pio. That was the Belgian kid. Remember? Because the government blamed him for not taking the helicopter he understood could not fly with drunk pilots,
right?
And told that poor kid, sure, get onto the helicopter. Remember that scene? It's horrible.
Right.
So it's this poor Belgian 22-year-old kid who's being blamed, and at the end he just revolts, said, "No, I'm not doing your autopsies. Go screw yourselves." And he's right. At one point, it's just like, I'm
yes.
And one thing about other countries, they really know how to punish people. Who thinks of that? Maybe if we did a little bit more of that, we would have less crime. Because I'm telling you, they really know how to punish people.
Go collect the bodies and do the autopsies.
Really? Because you should have been the one dead, not him. And since you didn't get on the plane and you didn't die, he died instead, it's your fault. It's like their mind is so twisted.
Speaking of which, in Indonesia right now, anti-mask activists are forced to dig graves for people who died of COVID. So
really?
Oh yeah. Indonesia doesn't. It's not like a democracy. It pretends it is, but
see, they onto something. They are on to something.
Oh, if you want them to pull out their guns and arsenals from their basements, Venita, just do that.
What? No, see, that's Rick, we are too nice here. For all those people out there protesting, let me out the house. I don't want to wear a mask. This is what needs to be done.
Yep.
The United States, we're so lovely. We act so all lovely about everything. Due process. That is swift. That's what should happen.
Oh yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
You don't want to wear a mask, fine.
No, I have another idea, like the sex offender file, but this time people would have to go door to door and say, "Hey, I'd like to let you know I live next door. I don't wear a mask. I'm dirty. Don't come near me." And you have a file. It's forever.
Oh God,
it's horrible.
No,
it's
we are too. We're bad. We're bad.
Okay. Yeah.
So you answered the question, Michelle. You were not surprised that they flee the scene. None of us were. And the ones that stayed are very heroic. Really, they are very special people in every way. Those scientists are special. Okay.
Are they heroic or, something came up to me when I was looking at Suro and all these guys. They have moments where they're scared. If you read closely, they're like adventurers pretty much.
Well, they are.
They love that. And I'm not saying that it's entertaining, but it's like priesthood or being really committed to something in life. This is your life. And running towards that is part of your instinct at that point. It's a second nature, and you would be bored. Like a lot of these guys that are turned back are actually people who didn't go there in the first place. And those who try to leave, well, not that many if you think about it. And there's this kid that gets sick with yet again another disease that they haven't identified.
That was interesting.
Welcome to an isolated area with a lot of ecosystems, very humid, in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
welcome.
Right.
That's what happens.
Yeah, and there was one, it may have been P.O. also, who at the end of the story realized that, you know, that was going to be his life, that he would never be satisfied with anything, you know, less adventuristic than that kind of thing. So,
McCormick. McCormick was crazy. Technically, you're thinking Sudan had gone and was about to go through a massive civil war between the South and the North. The South was cut. Those words were never used. He was a white guy with a ton of material in a region that hadn't seen that in years. Didn't know where he was going. Got there, did his inquiry, and left a note in the box. You know, they're naughty boys. That's what I mean. You know,
they're naughty boys.
They like playing, and the thing is that where they're, and I believe they help people by being like that, because a lot of people are reassured by these guys because they think, okay, these guys seem to be focused and curious about our problems, and you know they're not there for the money, because technically I'm not sure you make a lot of money in living in horrible conditions for months, scared that you might die bleeding out all of your blood.
Right.
You know, I'm in for the money and the chicks. No way.
Yeah, and then to be the spouse, you know, of one of those people is another, you know, kind of adventure. You know, like the family where they were told, I think it was P.O.'s wife and another one, Guido maybe, that they had been killed in the crash. You know, the one that got sick and the whole family had to be quarantined. You know, I'm not sure I want to even be married to this person.
Well, see, that's why you would not be married to a scientist. And that's why those women are also very special. Because let me tell you right now, he would have caught something and I would even call an attorney. He caught it, write the papers up, because he cannot come back in here. Okay.
Well, it's like,
yeah, but what about with COVID, you know, COVID-19? And all of the workers, yeah.
A lot of doctors are staying in hotels. They're not going home because they don't want to get back to their families. They're still in hotels. The ones who work on the front line, especially at the height of the epidemic, when folks are, you know, inundated with patients. It's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah. And then you have to wrap yourself in a plastic bag because our country does not see fit for you to have the proper equipment and protection that you need to deal with very sick, contagious people. That's disgusting. It's no better than the missionary workers with needles that were contaminated. We work in the same way, really.
You have to realize that the book we're reading, all these cases, a lot of doctors were treating COVID, and those hospitals were aware of how they had unfolded. And so they knew that it was risky to work like that because they knew they had made these mistakes in the past from their studies, you know. I know, like, and you were talking, there's a funny story, Carlo Urbani, who discovered SARS in 2002 when he met his wife in his 20s. It was like the 80s or something like that, 70s. And he had glasses and was a nerd. So she thought, this is a calm guy, you know. He's a doctor. He works in labs. Cool, calm life. And then she discovered that his job is actually to go in the middle of nowhere. And I knew a guy like that, a pharmacist for the WHO. Very nice people, but to end up in places where you have mass murderers, genociders, like in Cambodia, that you have to talk to about, do you know if there's a disease around here? Other than people you're, of course, raping and destroying. So, and so she was scared of his job because he was like, she was explaining he didn't really, he looked careless, you know? He would go to dictators and all these guys and be like, hey, can we do that? Oh, you shot somebody? Yeah, I don't care. I need information. Like, so it worked out to, it's a strange set of skills, and he died of SARS, one of the first victims. He identified it and said goodbye through a window to his wife. He's one of these guys who died. It's not uncommon. The guys who discover disease die of it. Who lives by the sword dies by the sword. They know the rule. Epidemiologists, doctors who study those diseases, they might be the first death recorded.
Yeah, I guess so. Wow.
And so he has an incredible story, and he's not the only one. It's nobody believed that, what's the name of that doctor, that his polio vaccine worked. So he tried it on himself.
Jonas Salks?
Yeah, he tried it on himself first. And
really?
on his children. Yeah. A vaccine that's not safe, that hasn't been tested, if it doesn't work, oh my God, you don't want to.
Right.
You don't want to go through that. So yeah.
Right. Jeez.
Well, see, that's why we're not scientists.
We want to have a normal life.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have some very boring scientists, though. You know, like mathematicians, they just do maths. Except that they get involved with the CIA and SA. Okay, yeah, okay. Granted.
See, Rick. Your imagination just takes you. Rick's like, well, unless they get involved with the CIA, and then you know. Okay. So what's next?
It would, you know.
But Rick, as we've been reading this book, I can so see you as one of these people.
I grew up with my dad was like that, you know, so in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, he was an engineer, but in tires and stuff, but he was a chemist too. So it was like, this is when I learned as a kid, I don't want to eat that. You eat it, they have nothing, they give it to you. Eat it. But it's bugs, eat it. It's just eat it.
Yeah.
So that's why I always eat when I'm a guest, even if it's disgusting. And I'm like because I don't want to insult my host. So that comes from there. Because you meet people who have nothing, really nothing, and they invite you. You gotta eat.
Yeah, in this story, it was the Arak. That sounds like some kind of corn liquor, you know.
It's the guy says it's actual pure alcohol, and I remember I met a guy who owned a Pakistani guy who's in Queens who used to own a construction company back in Pakistan. And he told me that at night they had to seal they had alcohol to burn for the painting, to remove paint and stuff, pure, like 90 degrees, 100 degrees alcohol. They had to seal them away because at night people would break in and steal them to get drunk on that. Because in Pakistan, alcohol is like illegal. It's an Islamic country. People can get it if they're rich, but most people. So it's interesting, the world is, people would drink anything. So I think that's what they were drinking there. Pure ethanol, like.
And they were always drinking, especially those pilots. Did they have any rules in 1976?
How many actually died? And what's funny is that at first they only drink, remember, at the first section of our reading, they only drank wine. And then when they come back from that area, Laurie Garrett says, at night they were working hard, drinking wine and Ozark. So they adopted it, even though that's what I like with the characters in the book, the people who are involved, is that they're really open-minded. They hate it at first, but yeah, we're going to take it.
Yes.
Still going to try that now.
Yeah. Venita, would you read question 7, please?
Okay. Joe McCormick reaches Yambuku and said the viruses in Yambuku and Niger were totally separate outbreaks of Ebola. He also said the Sudanese outbreak seemed to be less severe. McCormick's theories were dismissed, but years later will be proven. Nature had, indeed, rolled out an incredible set of snake eyes. Have you ever been the man on the ground like Joe McCormick and had your opinions and perspectives easily dismissed by people who didn't see what you saw? Joe had traveled the rough and remote terrains between Zaire and Sudan, the roads less traveled, to conclude there was little chance that Yambuku and Niger strains of Ebola were the same. Why wouldn't his colleagues take his counsel seriously? Well, I wondered that when I was reading that.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't they? He's a professional. He's a respected in his field. They know who he is. Why would they question what his suspicion was?
Yeah.
Because it defies all set of knowledge in epidemiology. You need a link. A pathogen cannot be spontaneously appearing in two different areas because ecosystems are different, temperatures are different, everything's different. That region in Sudan is near the desert, the Sahara. It's already very dry, and you have Zaire, which is lush and full of rainforests. It doesn't make sense. It should be the same animal in that case, but not the same set of animals. The only common thing everywhere is manipulating bowels and blood without proper protection. That's the only link of this disease in all areas. The funerals.
Yes.
When people and women would put their hands without opening inside the bowels to remove all the intestines and stuff to prepare the body for the funeral without protection. And you have the nurses in the hospital without protection. The problem is that if it's that procedure that creates Ebola, we should see that in Europe. We should see that in Asia. We should see that in South America too, because everybody would, at one point, something would happen where a surgeon or somebody would do it. Why was that guy in down Porter, the London lab, he didn't have any insertion? There was no blood. He checked. He didn't sting himself while he was manipulating the syringe. So how did the virus get under his nail? So it got without piercing. So it's the nails again. Is that the vector?
I thought he did prick himself with a needle.
No, he checked. He got so paranoid. He used a looking glass. There was no entry point. So that means the virus went under the nail into what's just under the nail without opening the skin. That was enough to contaminate.
Yes, because he did. He was so frantic.
Like,
when it happened, that he was down there looking to see, with the microscope and everything else, that there was nothing there.
There was no stab wound.
Yeah.
So what I think is that the mystery is what McCormick is saying is something that is so revolutionary potentially for science that naturally speaking, you're going to go towards the solution that might be the simplest, which is somebody probably traveled. The problem is nobody would have been able to travel so long without dying in between. And like he says, there's nothing between villages, and it's not like two airports, like in Zara and what's the other city?
Madeira.
Yeah, exactly. Are naturally hyper isolated.
Right.
So why would somebody from Zaire in an isolated region in Zaire have to go by airplane in a region where you didn't have any for 2 months? So everything is, he's right, McCormick, and they're right too. It doesn't make sense. So that requires somebody with a new theory. It's revolutionary. That's what Ebola is scary, because it kills cells on site. It kills them. Yeah. That's why people bleed. They melt. We don't say it like, but that's what we know in epidemiology. You melt. Your cells are bursting one by one.
Yeah.
It's a horrible death.
Yeah, well, that aspect of the story stood out for me, because I just think it's kind of common in the workplace for the people who are closest to the work, but who are not the managers, or the bosses in the situation, often have a hard time having their perspectives taken seriously. And, in some cases, the bosses may have more education, may have more experience, but yet and still, if you're not the person doing the day-to-day work, or you're not the person who saw whatever you saw, like what Joe saw, then it just happens too often that those views get dismissed without any serious consideration. So it felt like one of those cases to me.
Well, the ego is very powerful. And whether it's work or whether on a personal level, which I strongly believe in, because I've seen the results of it. As long as you operate on ego, you will always fail. You will always miss out on opportunities. You'll miss information. You just miss life. And unfortunately, we have people, many people that walk around every day that operate solely on ego.
But on the other hand,
and that's the problem with science too. It's human. It's human. But I just find we have excessive amount of that now. I mean, excessive amount of people that are operating every day on ego. I know, and Michelle gave a good example. I'm more educated, so how would you know? I'm your manager. You do as I say. Meanwhile, I'm down in the trenches. I'm seeing what's happening on a daily basis, but it's all ego. And that's why, as a whole, one of the reasons why we're a failure in this country, because everyone operates off of ego.
I think there's a difference between the workplace and that situation. That situation, you have peers who have who all have gone through a lot of studies, but they're all experts in one field. So they're humble enough to recognize they don't know everything. And precisely because of that, had I been in their situation, I would have told Joe, you were alone there. Your impressions, your theories, you may have missed something because you were alone. And that's why normally in science, you work in teams. Yeah. Because you cannot rely on just one person. Now in the workplace, the manager you're talking about is being informed not by one or two employees, but several. And they still have this power trip. I'm not sure this was about power or ego in their cases, but more like genuine scientific awe that no, you must be, you're overreaching. Wait, let's go back to what we know. We usually know it goes through transmission contact. So, they went back to their knowledge base, which is dogmaticism, sure. But I think that I'd rather have a world where I can say, here's the thing, at the workplace, they shun you for reporting a problem and finding a solution that they don't like. But Joe McCormick wasn't shunned from the team after that. The official report said, yeah, we're still trying to find out because they couldn't tell the public, oh, those outbreaks are spontaneous. Think about the outcome. Right. It could happen in Scotland. No, it could happen in Japan. No, wait, no panic. Oh, God. There you go. They panicked.
Yeah.
So,
since Venita brought up ego, let's look at question 11. I'll read it. Sorrell and Bremen had been appalled at the Yambuku hospital. The sterilization facilities were abominable. The surgical equipment positively antique. And the linen, though washed, was often covered with old blood stains. Yambuku pregnant women in for a shot of vitamin B complex were infected with lethal doses of Ebola at the hospital. The sisters did not appreciate this information. The hospital must be viewed as an epidemic amplifier, said El Tahir of the Sudanese strain of Ebola. The hospital was reusing needles hundreds of times a day. Questions. How could such conditions exist in 1976? Do these conditions exist somewhere in the world today? Why would the sisters engage in such nasty practices? Why wouldn't the sisters appreciate knowledge about how the virus was being spread? Why would the people accept such conditions? Surely the sisters did some good. Is no help better than filthy, substandard care?
Well, I mean, religion comes into play too.
I'll be right back, Venita. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think religion comes a lot into their way of thinking. Because, these were sisters, and I'm sure that they thought along the dirty needles and prayers and those 3 drugs they had to offer, maybe antibiotic, vitamin B complex, and whatever else they had, along with prayers would do the job. They also felt probably that, what they had to give was better than not having anything. But I think a lot of that was religion. I think a lot of it was, I think religion came into that a lot. Their attitude, how, in other words, I am sacrificing my life for the Lord. How dare you criticize us? So it was this, so I think that they just skipped over the part of, really listening and saying, we need to have a better facility. We need to have a sterile facility. We need to have a doctor that's overseeing this hospital. We need to have actual trained nurses and assistants. They didn't even hear that.
Not them. Which means not them. Which means they
you see what I'm
villagers,
saying? They didn't even hear that part. They didn't even hear that.
But
they don't even heard was you insulting.
Yeah, but this is where I think they're missing. Everybody's missing something there. The sisters were there to pretend, from the Zaire government and the Belgian government, at the same time, to pretend one cared about their own population, the other one cared about past crimes. They didn't. It was just a bandage. It was just the appearance of care. That's why they sent in nurses that were untrained with subpar equipment that was amounted to torture.
What I'm saying, right.
What I'm saying is that I don't put the blame on these sisters. They were well intended, which, hell is paved with good intentions. I always say that because the real culprit is the government. How dare you have for sole hospital for 50 villages a place full of amateurs who don't even understand basic anatomy?
Well, because these are the same
you know what I mean?
That's what makes me angry. And abused and killed and murdered these people, the Belgians. I can't even talk about that without just losing my head. The Belgians. But
that's what I'm saying is that to me
is the lowest of lowest people. Okay, along with the rest of the damn Europeans that did the horrible things.
Oh no, I'm not just talking about the Europeans.
So no, we know.
I'm talking about Mobutu also.
We know exactly why they did, what they did.
Sure.
Just throw a little patch over there and throw the missionaries over there, keep it colonized again.
Quick question: where was Mobutu at that time? Switzerland. So and this is why the big problem is I remember Che Guevara. He tried to help Kabila during the 60s against Mobutu to take over the power, because Mobutu was not the man of the Belgians, he was the man of the Americans.
Yes.
And the French.
Well, the Hutus.
So the thing is that Mobutu, like a lot of dictators, Che Guevara said, as long as
the Hutus and the Tutsis.
Oh, but that's in Rwanda and Burundi.
Right.
That's part of Zaire, Congo now. But what I mean is that ex-colonists and dictators work hand in hand to divert all the infrastructure money that are given by us taxpayers, by the way, to our governments and the UN to buy shit that they make and weapons to keep power and oil and all the stuff for free for Europeans and Americans and Australians. And what I'm saying is that the real culprit are not those sisters. It's that system of very interested and very identifiable individuals. There's no conspiracy. It's in the open. We know what we're doing in Congo. We know what we know these phones wouldn't work without platinum. Platinum you can't really find elsewhere than in Africa right now. At least at the price that makes it just $1,000 to get that whole cell. So the thing is that what I'm saying is these sisters were maybe, if I'm in charge and I decide instead of putting a hospital for 50 villages, a real hospital, and I decide to put you, me, and Michelle to help people and practice surgery, I'm a criminal. And that's what I'm saying. The government is all the governments, not just Europeans, but also Mobutu. The Zaire government, the Zaire army failed their own citizens. They're all drunk. You know what I mean? And it's horrible when you see that. When you think about the normal civilian in Zaire who is waiting for help. Well, they stopped waiting a long time ago. And that, it's horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know that the government has a big part to play in that. But I was talking about specifically the sisters. And of course, it's not their fault that they have the so-called, I don't even call it a hospital.
They were trying to fill the gap.
They were definitely trying to fill the gap. But we were specifically talking about why they felt so insulted. That that was actually the question. Thinking about why they were so insulted, because they were doing the best they could, and I still do believe. Having said that, the religion also came in to that. They knew they're using unsterile equipment. Yeah,
and I thought about that question because you had brought up ego earlier, Venita.
It is,
and and a measure, I think, of guilt, going on there. And she talks about that in the book that they didn't want to feel like their sisters, the other Belgian sisters, right, who died as a result, they didn't want to feel like they had participated in that. So it's not even just that the conditions were horrible for the population, the African population, but they were horrible conditions for, even the sisters to be working in. It was just.
Let's all remember, only 4 sisters are Belgian. They hired locally people they wouldn't pay. Remember, many of the sisters who died were from the region. Sophie, they weren't white, and so again, they're the ones dying. The elders, not all of them died. The one who runs to the scientists when they arrived last week, she's white. And what I'm saying is that they were doing the dirty work, and the one who died in Kinshasa was the one who volunteered to be with her sisters. So why would they feel insulted? I get it, but in the other hand, when it said, tell them you're victims, you are victims, you were abandoned, and you were used and exploited, and you happen to contract a disease. It's like here's the conclusion I have from Joe McCormick that was probably not politically correct. These hospitals, if you ill manage a hospital, Ebola will appear worldwide. The idea is that hospitals are incubators of Ebola if you do something wrong in the way you manage things. That means a lack of hygiene. And maybe Ebola existed in the past. There was a disease in Europe in the 13th century that happened. We never understood it. We called it the sweat. People would die in 5 days. They canceled battles because of the sweat. When they heard that one of the armies had the sweat, they abandoned the field. They didn't have a war. That's how scared people were in the Middle Age of that thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a horrible story, and and
and then along a similar vein, the who was it? Guido, whichever one of the scientists who got Ebola in London.
He survived.
And he was able to get Sophie or Saccato's anti-serum, right? So that's another interesting dynamic that the people right there on the ground would have really less access to the life-saving processes. You know, he was in London, so
But
there was that.
One thing that's interesting about that is that they don't have access to these medications, but they're astonished, the scientists, to see that these people, so-called uneducated, had taken the proper steps in epidemiology to stop the disease themselves.
Yes.
The two regions conquered it alone.
That's it.
That's what they're telling you. Nobody helped. The scientists are just discovering there was a thing here that killed people, and we identified how it looks. Hey, we don't know where it comes from.
Yeah, and they were also aware that the hospital, you know, was the source. Was the source.
So, so-called uneducated, there you go. Education doesn't mean going to college. And these guys had understood things before anybody else and had taken proper precautions. It's. I think they're the heroes, the villagers.
Oh, I definitely say they save themselves.
Yep.
Yeah.
Again, scholars are always tripping on themselves.
Again, the adventurer, real life contrast between the colonist, who now is an adventurer, who used to be a colonist, but now he can't do that anymore, so I'm becoming an adventurer. Nice guy, you know, but still, it's part of the same problem. And then you have the people who have to deal with that shit on their own.
That's right.
Without tools, without shit. And that's why we should call these people from these villages who survived, who are old now, and tell them to come to America and tell us what to do.
Well, we're trying to do that. We're doing that now, right here. Every state and every governor, it's up to them.
Yep.
To
but they don't care.
You have one on one side of the Trumpers. They're saying, don't worry about it. It's about the economy first.
It's the flu.
We may lose a few people down to casinos, but open them up because we can't afford to. Then we have the other governors over here saying, look,
you're gonna die if you go outside.
Right. I mean, you know, you got New Jersey. I'm just using as an example. New York
like tree streets.
And Connecticut saying, well, I tell y'all what, we're not opening no casinos up here, and we got some in Connecticut, huge ones. You know, so we're doing the same thing. Everybody's on their own, and we're actually saving ourselves.
But about that, something that shocked me in the book, they all get the fever. Several of them. They don't report it to each other. So the guys who know, they should follow that protocol, or the first one to bow on it. And it shows I got angry at Suro and Pio. You have fever.
Yeah, right.
You put together these protocols. Yeah. Because you like the adventure, the gig, because you're having fun with the mystery.
Yeah,
you have to do what's right.
I was angry about that.
I was super angry.
You actually intentionally hid that you were sick.
And you keep on working with others. Yeah. It's not like you're in your house alone, and you don't report it. I get it. But in that case, it's like you don't know how it's transmitted. And
they didn't care. That's their ego. They want they want to be whoever's on that mission want to be the first to discover where it came from. Yep. Okay, so they were not going to give up, their adventure.
True.
So what if I have Ebola? Not Ebola.
What if I give it to other people? And also maybe the other idea, I'll get there, and if I get sick, my government will come over, and they get angry because the airplane is on the airport. I'm sorry, the United States can call the government, the embassy, and in 6 hours a plane from Madrid, Spain, flies in to Kinshasa. Under 6 hours in 1976. That's called power. And these guys complained that it took double time to bring that kid to Johannesburg. Yeah. I'm sure it would have, anybody else would have taken, nobody could get there. They managed to get to a place where you're not supposed to get from another, you know what I mean? In 72 hours, and they're still complaining.
Yes.
Yeah, but that was a miserable 72 hours.
Yeah.
I
get it, but
why would they expect anything different? They act like they're all shocked. Where do you think you are?
They got a space age technology suit for the kid. I know it deflated and it had a lot of problems. The guy from Zaire who gets Ebola is like, really? You get all that stuff. I get nothing. I get being in my in my house and dying.
I thought that was a harrowing 72.
Well, it was bad. It was bad, Michelle. It was bad. It was bad. It was bad.
I mean, I could barely breathe myself thinking of that plastic tent falling down and all that heat and out there on the tarmac.
Yeah, Michelle.
Laurie Garrett's really nice not to tell us what he gave. They gave him, but it's probably benzodiazepines, like a huge dose in intravenous. Because anybody else, 72 hours in that thing, you panic.
Yeah.
How did that kid not tear apart that thing?
Yeah.
And that's because they put him a ton of benzo, so he would be high.
And then the time that Sophie and Sukata took their first flight, and the pilots didn't want them on the plane.
Oh my God, poor her.
And so they ended up like having to take their first flight in the cargo area.
I want to talk about that.
That was crazy. And then at the end, when I think it was P.O. was heading home, and the pigs and the chickens.
Here's some coronavirus for you. Coming from Ebola, get a new virus.
Yeah, Michelle went all in. Michelle, you was all up in it.
I could just see that plane. And then you got the cargo on this side of the plane and the cargo on this side. People crying, bones broken.
You know what I'm saying? Michelle went all in.
What did you guys think? What did you guys think about the monks, the priests in the middle of nowhere, living off insects and flower 5-year-old the flower?
Yeah.
Africa's a crazy place. You have these white missionaries in the middle of nowhere. Who are you converting? I don't know. We're starving. Well,
yeah. See, I wouldn't have made it. I wouldn't have made it. I wouldn't have made it. I know.
I would be dead.
You know, that just made me wonder, like, what's going on with the church? Like, she said they have not been in communication. You know,
are you pedophiles? You know that we're from here, so because it's kind of off. Here's a promotion, brother. Where am I going? You're going to in the middle of Africa? Like, there's no airplane or roads. Like, it's really nowhere. But I'm a missionary. Or you're gonna convert like the two guys around. You know? Why would you be sent there?
They have been banished to Africa.
But they're you know, it's like you must have done something really freaky to be sent there. Like, okay, this is your mission.
Yeah. That was weird. That was
really weird. That scene was like, wait, that comes out of nowhere. Like,
yeah. And then do you have an image of I think his name was Ungawa? He was the guy out in Sudan. I think he was, you know, that's where they had the cotton factory, where they were catching bats and rats and all kinds of stuff, right, where the disease was centered. But Ngara was the jazz club owner. Now, can you picture a jazz club out in this place?
I just didn't understand that part. I didn't understand that. I know I did. That's why this book just takes you. I'm like, really?
I was like,
it's a crazy world.
Yeah,
it's a crazy world. It's a crazy world.
I was babysitted by a red mare once. Nice guy. I didn't know what it meant. Later, I understood. A red mare.
What's that?
The soldiers of genocider Pol Pot, who were in Cambodia in the 70s and slaughtered 3 million of themselves out of 5 million inhabitants. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, these guys were it was corruption, and at that point, but my family, like, when we were in Cambodia, they were important people. They're, notables, people from the area you had to say hello to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it was nice. He was no nice guy, but he killed people with his hands. So reality is complex. I'm not saying he's a good man. What I'm saying is that reality is complex.
Right.
It's not
Right.
that easy to determine right from wrong. That's why people say, but Donald Trump is so nice in private. And you're like, really? Oh my God. Okay, if you say so. But it's possible. That's the problem with reality, is that people can be good selectively, but they're evil collectively. They love inflicting pain, but they only like inflicting love to very select people.
Yeah. So what do y'all think about all the revelations coming out with Bob Woodward and
that Bob Woodward with his top secret source, which are extensive recorded conversations with the president. It's the first time his job is that easy.
Yes.
Yeah,
because Nixon, everybody else, you had to investigate, people in parking lots at night with big, umbrellas and stuff, and be like, "Grr." This time he was like, Mr. President, what about coronavirus? I'm laying it down now because that's deadly, man. Don't go out.
Yes. And what was so sad about it is that all the conversations were not initiated by Bob Woodward. Donald Trump called him numerous amount of times in the middle of, how you doing? I got some more stuff to tell you. I mean, no, this is kind of bullshit. Excuse the expression. That Donald Trump. No, I don't excuse that expression. It is bullshit. I'll take that back. That's exactly what I meant.
What's really upsetting
he woke up in the middle of the night. He woke up in the middle of the night and took a dookie and called Bob Woodward after he had some McDonald's at 2:00 in the morning and said, "Hey, by the way, let me tell you about this. I'm trying to kill everybody."
I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I think Don guy's suspecting that, as Don doesn't know. I want him to die. But I find fascinating.
But we already know that, and then what's so sad about it, he doesn't want to. I can't talk about that fool. No, but that narcissists will do anything for attention. It doesn't make a difference what kind of attention. Donald Trump was on the stage. Bob Woodward loves him. That's all he knew.
Yeah.
That's narcissism. I'm telling you, it's just so easy to manipulate them. That's why Putin loves him.
Yeah, but
that's why he loves him.
But there's a big problem. What's really unsettling is not that. It's that nothing happened. He should be dead.
That's true.
200,000 Americans were killed knowingly by Obama would have been hung.
Yeah, but
Bush would have been impeached and beaten up to death. I'm not kidding. Remember? It's insane. And people are still cheering him up and saying, well, the economy.
No.
Wow.
But Donald Trump bought, white folks have lost their damn mind.
There's a chemical somewhere in the water. It's not possible.
Can we have one person talk at a time, please? Y'all gonna make me put some rules in effect. Venita, you have the floor. Let's have a rule. You can talk for 3 minutes peacefully, and then after that, you pass the mic. Venita, are you finished?
I guess I am. Just told me I was finished. So I guess I'm finished. You just told me I was finished.
All right, then. Rick, go on.
Well, I'm finished too, then.
We're just finished. We're finished. You told me we're finished. We're done.
Your turn. You do the 3 minutes.
Yeah. Well, Venita knows in our other group. At times we used a timekeeper. In fact, Venita would be the timekeeper because all of us know how to talk, and none of us know when to stop. So it does help. But because we're such a small group, I think we can be a little bit more flexible, but I would like us to have one person talk at a time. That's all. So since we were talking about Donald Trump, I'll read question 4. Question 4. Mobutu was in Switzerland and the government was nearly paralyzed. No one else dared order the armed forces to fly into the Bumba zone. What does this suggest to you about Mobutu's management style? How do you think it compares with the current US president, who seems to be imposing himself in the smallest details of the country's response to coronavirus?
Well, I was disappointed Laurie Garrett did not know why he was there. Switzerland is, when I was a kid growing up, Mobutu would always come to Switzerland to get healthcare.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Like Yasser Arafat would come to the French hospital in Paris. Which other dictator? Because they couldn't go to America because America was officially against them. They couldn't go to Russia because they didn't trust the KGB. So they would always go to so-called neutral country so Yasser Arafat was France, and Mobutu couldn't be France or Belgium, so it was Switzerland. And he went there and he learned about Ebola. To get proper, beautiful, top healthcare, just in case. That's the guy he had become.
Mm-hmm.
He hadn't started like that, but it's power corrupts absolutely. It corrupts power. I think it shows that Trump is Mobutu.
Mm-hmm.
It shows that Trevor Noah, when Trump was running for president, did a whole skit on his show, Daily Show, saying, I come from Africa and I understand what Americans want. You want an African dictator. And he compared Trump, some of his speeches, to speeches from infamous African dictators. They're the same. I'm the best. I can cure every disease. I was the smartest kid in my village. I grew up to be the best warrior. Trump does that. It's the same profile. So America is now officially part of Africa, which may be good or bad. Who knows? It's a different world. So, but we're more South Africa than Africa, like the old style South Africa, if you know what I mean.
I do. Yeah, well, it's a great source of concern for me that the Trump administration seems to be manipulating what the CDC can and cannot say, and manipulating their reporting. And it's just the height of outrage that a politician would be involved in that level of detail. It's unless you're a dictator. I mean, that just seems like classic dictator behavior.
And you know what's really scary about those tapes? I always thought Trump was a narcissistic idiot. But no, he's very clever. He's doing all of that calculated. Now we know it for a fact because of those recordings. He knew it was airborne and deadly.
Yeah.
That was not official until April. I knew it back then. I was wondering why the authorities were not reporting it. And they know exactly what data to target, reported to the CDC and the FDA to change the narrative. And to know that, and it's part of my job, you need to be trained. You need to know what you're doing. And everybody's scared horribly because the CDC, which used to be one of the greatest institutions in the history of humanity with all its victories, smallpox, etc., is now, in just a few months, it's a shame. It's disgusting, and all scientists at CDC should walk out. I don't know what they're not doing that. They should walk out now. You're not going to help patients. You're part of the problem if you stay. I'm sorry. And thank God for Johns Hopkins. And there's another organization rising up. It's ICER. It's independent. The MIT is still there, but the FDA also lost all credibility.
Yeah.
They have. The FDA did have a lot, but the CDC used to be like the best of the best. And now it's like,
right.
This guy has destroyed everything very consciously. One thing he couldn't destroy is the ACA, so-called Obamacare, because private health plans have actually made money out of it, because what Obama proposed made sense. You're going to save money, not lose. At first, you're going to lose money. You have to invest, but and they saved so much money that when Trump wanted to repeal it, they're the ones who stepped in, pharmaceutical companies, and to protect Obamacare, because it actually works for them. So Trump wasn't able to change that because Obamacare was not that bad to private interests. It takes a lot of genius, I think, to be a president to come up with a law that is so good, even if it has its flaws, that poor and rich people want to protect it. This is a lot about who Obama was as a president.
Well, apparently Americans don't like geniuses.
Oh, something that explains everything. This interview about when Trump was trying to repeal Obamacare, a Trump voter lady, like in her 50s, realized that what they call Obamacare is actually the Affordable Care Act, which she was benefiting from and liked. But she had voted for Trump because she wanted to repeal Obamacare. She didn't understand the two things are the same.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. It's like horrible when you realize how dumb people are. And when you have a clever man at the White House, people, who is he to talk to us like that? That's, the problem. Trump can insult everybody, but he's a great, cool guy. It's mediocre.
Venita?
I'm just listening I'm just listening. I don't know.
What do you think about Trump's management style? Would you want to work for him?
I think I could. I think I could work for Trump, and I think that you will be reading his obituary in less than 24 hours.
Wait, we need to do a disclaimer. Bob at the NSA, that's a joke.
Thank you.
No, because we're monitored probably, so.
Right. Yeah.
How's the wife, Bob?
So I just don't know. Well, actually, there are, I used to actually work under a person that was a narcissist. And it was very sad. He would have people in tears. Other than me, of course, because I confront narcissists head on. Really, this head on. And when you do that, you have to bear in mind that you are leaving. And that was when I was young, very young, and I was independent. I had to pay my own bills. But at that point, I just didn't, I wasn't doing that like that. So, I went in, crushed him. And before he got ready to bring a hammer down, I told him, Bob, let me get my purse. Here you go. You know what I'm saying? So, no, I don't know. I've worked with, they're this horrible. But I don't know. I don't know. I still know. Actually, he's pretty well working on everyone, because I don't know what's real and what's not real anymore either. I mean, he can literally kill thousands of people and no one has a problem with it. But I would think they wouldn't, because they didn't have a problem killing me.
Yeah.
So I can understand why white America would stand behind that, a lot of white Americans, because they have no problems killing me. They have no problems raping me, maiming me, hanging me, burning me, decapitating me, slaving me till I drop, experimenting on me. So, I guess I shouldn't be shocked. I really shouldn't be shocked.
But look at the narrative during the RNC. They called it about an epidemic of riots. They're not changing the narrative, but like the Republican Party looks through the lens, like you said, of white America, which is what really is our concern is our private property. We're not getting affected by this coronavirus because we can work from home. Now, our property is at risk through these images we look at. We're scared. So the real problem in America is law and order. And this is how you see the segregation of this country between those who live in it and those who own it.
Yes.
Yeah. I was watching
Sad.
on Netflix this week. There's a documentary called The Social Dilemma.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about, it's some engineers, some ex-engineer types from the social media industry. So people who had big jobs like with Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, the whole gang. And they have quit their jobs over their concerns about practices in the industry that are leading to these kind of alternate realities that are so prominent. And so they were talking about how, like, if you're on Facebook, the news feed that you have is, totally individualized to you, based on how they've analyzed who you are and what you like, and so every single person is reading their own news, tailored news. And so their real concern is that that industry, it has led us straight to the door of the demise of democracy, because if there's no agreement on facts, there's no way to solve problems, and that's where we are.
And they even do something worse than that. It's called progressive aggregation. So the idea is that, and that happens to me as a white male when I'm on YouTube. So I watch videos of dogs and cats, but once in a while I'll get a funny video about a guy commenting on I like video games, so sometimes watch video game videos. Those videos are all full of, code words and memes for the far right. Mm-hmm. So they don't talk about these topics, but they have references and stuff that speak to. So that's recommended to me. And that's part of a process where Twitter, they're not just interested in how many times you engage. For advertisers, an advertiser needs to make sure that his ad is going to be seen by a lot of people for several days in a row. Mm-hmm. So the only way is to get people to engage in what we call high engagement groups. So groups where you like it so much that you come back every day to comment on something, some memes and stuff. Well, the most high engaging groups in terms of traffic are far right groups, incel groups. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So they tell you that's why Facebook doesn't want to mitigate that. And Twitter has hesitated for a long time. The reason is basically economic. And the far right is being very active. A lot of people aggregate in the far right. And the thing is, the far right has a strategy the far left doesn't have. And it's always had the same strategy, and it works brilliantly. I hear you. Sure. I hear you. That's how far right people recruit people. It's like a cult. At first, they hear you. They listen to your ideas. They're kind of cool. Mm-hmm. Even if it's not about race at first. Mm-hmm. And that's how they get in. And that's how Nazis used to do that. They would send their wives, the Nazi officials, to suing sessions, like, reading, like groups like this one, Bible studies, to talk a little bit, like, at first of the weather, and then beyond, those Jews, and progressively. And they did that. The far left and the left in general is moronic, because you come up and say, hey, I want to help. The first thing they're going to do is, how dare you think you can help? Who are you? Are you this? Are you that? The strange thing is now the left is categorizing people even before there's a contact. So, but you're a misogynist. I know it. Or I heard about colorism through rap music recently. You know about that, Michelle?
Yeah.
So I didn't know that was actually a problem. So you have, like, the song was about, there was two rappers, one who is black, and another one was a little less black. And we're explaining in the song that they get all the time criticized. Like, if you're black, that means you're a thug, even to black women. And if you're gray, that means you're not as strong. Or it was so odd. I didn't know that existed. That form of problem. It seems.
Yeah, it's a real problem. You know, Rick, in my other book group, the Global Black Feminist Reading Circle, we just started last night. I thought you were going to join us. But
I thought it was when you, okay, so that's why I had the invitation. I thought it was a mistake, but I'll join next week. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're reading Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson. And, you know, and so she's looking at the United States, Germany, and India, you know, and sort of doing a compare and contrast of the caste systems. And so, you know, India has a you know, really extensive kind of separation system going on, but for Black people in the Americas, the colorism is an outgrowth of the slave experience.
But that's what was
you know.
Interesting.
So
that,
if you were a little, if you were a little
reject
bit,
you.
huh?
What I'm saying is that even somebody like Black activists within the same group on Facebook are rejected by other Black activists.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, that it's an outgrowth of, you know, what started during slavery and continues to this day. And so unless you have a certain consciousness, you know, then even if you're a Black person, I mean, you know, another way of looking at colorism is internalized racism. So, you know, that's a lot of what the slave experience was about, was teaching us to hate ourselves. And so unless you kind of consciously try to decolonize, you know, your thinking, then it still persists, you know. In many places, I mean, in many African countries, you've got skin bleaching going on. Just a horrible disfiguring kind of process, because this idea that white is right, you know, it's very deep-seated.
But, you know, and it's strange because, well, in Europe, they had to prohibit those products to protect consumers because they were going through, you know, some ladies were going through extensive chemical care that was really bad. Mm-hmm. But what I'm saying is that, you know, based on, you were talking about this whole world we're at, you're seeing that the left is actually the only thing that's divided. Mm-hmm. The left is incapable of governing right now. And Trump, what I noticed with Republicans is that if I say, and I'm Trump and I'm a Republican, the moon is square, everybody will say, yeah, the moon is square. Well, he was making a point. Everybody, right. They have full unity. Yeah. And that's why they win. And that's why I'm angry at the left, because, you know, when Biden was named, people started arguing. I'm like, I'm still going to vote for the guy. You know, like I have a choice. Why are we arguing? I remember like this video, Gen Z are telling Biden what he needs to commit to so they get their votes, and like, what's the alternative? Yeah.
Well, you know, I don't want you to be mad at the left. I want you to understand that our challenge is very complex, much more. You know, I always like to think of the analogy of giving birth. You know, it takes 9 months to develop a human baby, to bring a human life into the world. But you can snuff a life out, in a few seconds. And it's always like that. Destructiveness is easy. Constructiveness is hard, just across the board. And so Trump and his ilk, who preach hate, 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 destroy, destroy, kill, kill, kill.
Yeah.
Right. He's preaching a very simple message that any simple-minded idiot could follow. But when you start talking about what's involved in loving one another, when you start talking about what's involved in building equality and democracy, in people who have been beat down systematically for hundreds of years, that is a very, very complex process.
Well,
and that's the challenge.
Where it's made complex, and it's made complex by active forces that very carefully and very scientifically know what they're doing. You're talking about castes,
Divide and conquer. It works.
Exactly. But think about you were talking about castes. The Europeans used to have a caste system that was very clear: priests, knights, and peasants, farmers. It was the caste system until colonization started. Why? Because the caste system was too expensive for some landlords, etc. So, in a nutshell, they said to people, were like, here's the thing, that the paradox that people don't realize about why colonization also happened from Europe. Remember, it was the third world. Europe was dirty, no real infrastructure. What happened is that children used to die, like 50% of them before 5 years old. So it was okay. Resources were around. There were famine. There you go. There were wars. Done. Around the 13th, 14th century, Europe became surprisingly rich. But a lot of kids starting surviving. And the tradition was the first kid takes over the house, will inherit. The second kid goes to war, and the third kid becomes a monk or a priest. What about the fourth and the fifth kid? They couldn't be anybody. Well, there was a new venture for them. And the problem is that they started becoming crooks and bandits and, destroying stuff in Europe. So there were a problem. So a new venture was found for them, the New World. That's why all Europeans know that white Americans descend directly from convicts and prostitutes. Yeah. It's true. They were sent here massively because we didn't want them anymore. And we needed to relieve the pressure at home. I always ask white Americans, why didn't Europeans have any slaves in Europe while they were selling them to Americans? And the horrible truth behind it is that Europeans understood that their own people could not be transported safely, massively to the Americas to work. So when you look at the horror behind slavery, deep down inside, it's an improvement of health conditions in Europe that leads to overpopulation in a caste system that's very strict. So white people found a new way to make that caste system survive, because without it, their society couldn't function. We found it easy to identify outcast. In India, outcasts appear later than the original three castes. And they're not really a caste, they're outcasts. Well, the identifiable outcast for Europe is Black people.
Right.
And it's hard. That's why it's being kept alive,
Venita, will give us the last word.
I'm just overwhelmed by it all this evening. One thing we know for sure is that diseases are never eradicated, and they can rear their ugly heads at any given time.
Yeah.
And that's scary. And it's even scarier with COVID-19, And it seems to be the lack of guidance by all the administrations that are supposed to be in place to guide the nation.
Yeah.
Well, they're doing a great job at misguiding.
Yeah. It's scary.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And so we will be back here next week. We have I think we're on vacation from this book group, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. But we're on in the other one on Tuesday, Rick, if you want to join there.
Sure.
So, okay. Have a great week, everybody, and see you soon.
Take care.
Good night, Rick. Good night, everyone.
Venita.
Good night.
Good night, Michelle.
Bye, Michelle.
Good night, John Boy.
I like that. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.